Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the second edition of GWF webinar. My name is Sarah. I work for Geospatial Media. I'm the product manager for Geospatial World Forum and our newly launched GWF webinar. Today we are discussing how Geospatial and AI can help in cybersecurity. And we have two speakers with us. Our first speaker is Mr. BERIDZE. He is the head of Center for Artificial Intelligence from United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute. IRAKLI, would you like to say hi to the audience?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Sarah. Hello, my co-speaker. I'm excited to be with you and share my experiences and thoughts and answer your questions on this vital subject.
All right. And our next speaker is Mr. JOSEF SCHROEFL. He is the Deputy Director, Strategy and Defense from European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. So we'll start with IRAKLI's presentation first. Over to you, IRAKLI.
Yes, thanks a lot, Sarah. It's really exciting to support your webinars here, to participate in that, to virtually meet the audience and discuss probably one of the sort of top subjects which have been in discussions in recent months, especially with the emergence of COVID and the special situation which we are having now. My presentation will be on the AI and law enforcement during and after COVID-19. It will touch upon the security risks and also risks associated to the data privacy and how we should manage and balance security and privacy. Now, for a month before COVID, I was starting my presentation on artificial intelligence with the notion that we are richer, smarter, and more connected than ever before as a human species, and we have unprecedented opportunity to accelerate solutions for unsolvable problems. I added extra slide here that on the 21st of May today, 2020, are we really richer, smarter, and more connected? We have been sort of going through this COVID situation. There has been a lot of different occurrences happening with us, but I still want to believe that we are going to come out of this situation with a lot of experience and a lot more connectivity. Through virtual means, I'm organizing a lot of events, a lot of engagements for the United Nations in the area of AI and law enforcement, and believe me that during last few months, we've engaged even more people virtually than we managed to engage physically. Now, the law enforcement agencies are and law enforcement officers are alongside with the healthcare workers on the front line of this fight against COVID-19. And I would like to take this opportunity once again, and I hope everybody will join me to give a round of virtual applause to the law enforcement officers globally who are in this fight against COVID. These are people all over the world who are risking their lives, who are engaged in the very delicate, very special situations to save lives, to protect us, to protect and ensure public safety and security. What's been happening with and how this situation impacted the crime? Traditional crimes within last two months have actually dropped around the world, and we've seen many different examples. Striking one is from Peru, that crime levels fell as much as 84% in March. In the United States or other countries, it has dropped significantly. There are different numbers, but all over the place, you've seen that traditional sort of crimes are in decline. But at the same time, cyber crimes or household crimes have increased. For example, like counterfeiting of the personal protective equipment, 37,000 unauthorized and uncounterfeit medical devices were seized, 129 arrests, 13 million in potentially dangerous pharmaceuticals seized, 37 organized crime groups dismantled, phishing attacks, and Google blocked as much as 18 million coronavirus scam emails every day. Child abuse cases have increased a lot, 200% surge in links to online child sexual abuse materials. Domestic abuse have been also on the surge. Racist, xenophobia, and hate speech, many incidents happening targeting specific groups and populations. Now we have a very different situation in that regard. Governments are introducing measures. Obviously, you all know lockdowns, limitations of movements, closures of borders, and law enforcement agencies are operating in a very delicate situations, and their work has become more difficult and more complex. Operational capacities were affected. Lack of personal protective equipment have also influenced the situation, reduced staff to the infected officers, and in some cases, very significant numbers have been affected. Also, new tasks like responding to the profiteering and price gouging, which has increased dramatically, or potential use of virus as a weapon, or policing social distancing quarantine, put the situation and put the situation for the law enforcement agencies extremely delicate, extremely complex, and difficult to operate. Now, how AI been used by the law enforcement during the COVID-19, and later on I'll tell you what could be the potential trends and lasting effects of that. There have been many, many different cases like face recognition utilized in many countries. Face recognition with the thermal sensor have been utilized in different countries of the world. The same like automatic number plate recognitions have been tested in some areas. We have cases like pandemic drones, which are connecting police using drones to detect when people on the ground have fevers, for example. Obviously, we have contact tracing applications, many different ones, and there have been different reactions of that related to the privacy issues, related to the issues of including human rights. Face recognition technology to monitor quarantines have been in place in a number of countries. For example, here in this map, you probably see that new digital tracking measures have been introduced in as many as 29 countries already, and this number is growing. Advanced physical surveillance technologies are used in 9 countries. COVID-19 related censorships have been imposed by 15 governments, and internet shutdowns are continuing in 3 countries despite the outbreak. Now, the main question here remains that whether these are the isolated cases or this is going to turn into a new norm, and what is it that we need to do or we should be doing about that. Now, fighting COVID-19 responsibly with artificial intelligence is one of the key aspects or key undertakings which the center, which I am heading, is involved in, advising governments, advising international organizations and NGOs how to be engaged in this situation. Therefore, concerns about human rights and civil liberties are very real and very serious, and we need to take this situation extremely seriously. It can undermine fundamental principles of law, presumption of innocence, privilege against self-incrimination, proof beyond reasonable doubt, or even damage public trust, which is essential for introducing any new applications like AI tools, especially for the law enforcement. Therefore, what we really underline is that any application should include the requirements of fairness, accountability, transparency, and explainability in their in the design of itself, and even including during the crisis. Now, there are 4 recommendations which I've developed and included in some of my recent articles. What we are underlining here, to ensure that these technologies are trusted, to ensure that it has it is really effective, that it is really used, because if people don't use it, it will not be effective. Therefore, you have a situation when to ensure the usability of that, you need people's trust. So what we are recommending is data anonymization, purpose limitation of the applications, time limitation of the application to ensure that governments discontinue these capabilities and they will scale back after the COVID-19 pandemic is over, and knowledge sharing and open access data. Now, will governments scale back their monitoring capabilities after the coronavirus pandemic remains to be seen. This is a big question. In some parts of the world, probably in different parts of the world, policies will be different. What we would like to see is that citizens participate, citizens understand exactly what their data is used for, and authorize the government to use these applications. What to expect and how this is going to go forward. The way we see it is that countries will continue adopting technologies to control the spread of the virus. Certainly, this is not over. In some part of the world, the situation is becoming better. Lockdowns are being eased up, but at the same time, these practices probably will continue. What will be the lasting effects or likely lasting effects of the post-COVID-19 world? Accelerated automation. We will see more and more tools, AI, beyond, and related technologies which will be used in our daily lives. A lot of jobs will be automated most likely, and there will be other occurrences there which we would need to bear in mind. There will be an accelerated data policy debate in different parts of the world. There will be different tolerance towards the data sharing. Definitely more digitization, and including in the law enforcement will become smarter in terms of use of technology, and there will be ongoing or lasting debate on using technology responsibly. And on top of that, law enforcement agencies and governments will be forced or will be encouraged to use technology to make sense of the enormous amount of data which they are collecting right now. At this moment, globally, we have accumulated around 40 zettabytes of data, which is a lot. This is as much as every human speech ever recorded. And by 2025, within 5 years, it is projected that we will accumulate 175 zettabytes. So to comprehend how much 175 zettabyte of data is if you put all of this in DVDs and from here to the moon 23 times. So that's a really lot of data, and no law enforcement agency, no government, or no human sort of collectively would be able to interpret so much data. Therefore, we would be needing to use the technology. Therefore, the question whether law enforcement will be using it or not, definitely will be using it. The main question should and will be how responsibly and what would be the benefit of the citizens in that regard. Now, opportunities, all this situation opens up enormous opportunities to reshape the very nature of the law enforcement, including AI and emerging technologies, how this is innovated and how this is put in practice, including rethinking operational processes like police services, role of the officers, business model, and this will all lead us to the future policing of the future, which definitely will be on the technology oriented, but at the same, it should be oriented on saving lives, on ensuring security, but balancing with the human rights and fundamental principles. Now, what we are doing about it, our center of the UNICRI, United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute, together with Interpol, we created quite a unique platform together with Interpol starting from 2018. And within that platform, we're bringing global law enforcement agencies and launching projects, launching reports, and ensuring and facilitating their cooperation. We're bringing also industry, academia, and other stakeholders in that regard. conducting AI for law enforcement global meetings. In 2018, 2019, we conducted meetings in Singapore, and later this year, we're going to hold a major event here in The Hague in the Netherlands. Last week, we issued a second report towards responsible AI innovation. If you go to the website of UNICRI, you can download the report. This is quite a major report, a joint report together with Interpol, which brings information about the latest applications of AI for law enforcement, use cases, trends, but also analyzes issues related to the ethical application, human rights, and in the end proposes of creation of so-called toolkit for the law enforcement, how to use AI responsibly. And this is a major project which we're going to launch end of the year, creating these toolkits which will be implemented, recommended to the law enforcement agencies globally, and we'll be assisting them to understand recent trends and recent occurrences in that regard. With this, I conclude my presentation. Back to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, IRAKLI. So I think we will move on first to Joseph.
I'm happy to present you our view of cybersecurity and crisis management mechanisms with a special focus on the current COVID-19 crisis. Let's have a look on this fully first. What is cybersecurity? Yeah, if you look the fully, you can see the complexity of the threat. Yeah, and that something has to be done, because what you see on this chart is the growing interrelationship between the complexity of attacks on the one side and on the other side, the increasing degree of cross-linking paired with a decreased understanding of the whole system architecture. So, and I don't speak only about cyberspace, I also speak about information space. I speak always about this both. And together with the production of malware on an industrial scale, you can see that by the time the horizontal axis, the danger is always rising. And what makes this even worse, all of these tools can be used not only for criminal purposes, but I come to that, mostly for financial enrichment, of course, but in a concerted and coordinated manner, also in serious cyber attacks against the critical infrastructure, as they are not different in peacetime or wartime. What are we dealing with? Yeah, principally with cybercrime as an example during the COVID-19 pandemics. Currently, as an example, Fresenius, Europe's largest private hospital operator and a major provider for dialysis products, and very important during the COVID-19 pandemic, has been hit in a ransomware cyber attack only 2 weeks ago on its technology systems. We speak about cyber espionage, and an example that the most skilled hackers and spies currently are working to steal research in the crash effort to develop vaccines and treatments for the coronavirus. We speak about cyber dis and misinformation, about black propaganda. We see it currently everywhere. Whether it's a corona self-test, or it's a 3-week incubation period, or a protection by garlic, we hear so much of it that the public and the politics call internet and media companies should do more to tackle the spread of misinformation, disinformation. Terrorist use of the internet, like stealing data of companies. Only a week ago, 2 days ago, EasyJet company, the British EasyJet company, where the data, also credit card details from 9 million flight guests has been stolen. And linked to that attack is a terror group in the Middle East. And we speak, of course, about cyber and information warfare. These are the military operations. And we saw only some days ago a cyber battle between the Iran and Israel. First, Iran is being linked to an attempted cyber attack against the Israeli water supplies, and as an answer, Israel is linked to a disruptive cyber attack on Iranian port facilities. What is cyber power now? When I speak about cyber power or information power, yes, cyber has become a new domain, very important. All political and military conflicts have a cyber dimension. Attackers possess a wide variety of appealing cyber strategies, tactics, and goals, and with terrorism, hackers have found success in poor media hype. However, cyber power and information power is also a prodigious tool for a weaker party to attack a stronger conventional nation because of that very advantage in IT. Therefore, Hybrid Center of Excellence here in Finland made its first cyber power and hybrid crisis conflict warfare symposium last November. The main questions we were asking were, on the one side, civil-military cooperation. Are the existing cyber crisis coordination mechanisms valuable, and could they contribute to a hybrid crisis coordination mechanisms? What are the needs from the private sector to the public? And the other panel was more military. Breaking the dominance of other domains. Can cyber power, can information power, can the cyberspace break the dominance of other domains like land, sea, air, airspace? Can cyber power eventually become the dominant domain? Could it become a possible center of gravity? And can a cyber attack decide a battle or even a war? Is a cyber blitzkrieg, as it possible? 5 core and main answers to that questions. Yes, EU and NATO have established a very good basis to counter cyber and hybrid threats, but it's still not enough. Situational awareness is the challenge. Cyber is inherent in all domains, but the cyber domain is as important to protect as land, sea, air, and airspace. But the big difference is the cyberspace is man-made. We, the human being, made that domain. Cyber has become part of collective security. Therefore, the national cyber crisis management mechanisms from all countries could also be used against hybrid threats. But that needs really a huge, comprehensive, whole of state, whole of society cooperation and approach. Theoretically, a cyber blitzkrieg is already possible, practically not, but the growth of new technologies have the capacity to shape public opinion. And it is easy to predict that cyber power becomes more dominant in the future. This is only a sketch to see how many years it took for one product to gain 50 million users. The airplane needed 68 years, telephone 50 years, TV 22 years, ATM 18 years. And it became always faster and faster. The internet needed only 7 years, Facebook 2 years, Twitter 9 months, Fortnite, a nightmare for all parents, 16 days, and TikTok, the new produced video software, I think 1 or 2 years now on the market, only needed 11 days. What I want to show you by that is it becomes everything faster and faster and faster, and it's more and more easy to gain billions of dollars and euros by a good idea. And what are these new technologies now? Yeah, we speak about cloud computing, augmented reality, drones, solar power, quantum sciences, artificial intelligence, of course, yeah, medical cryonics, everything, yeah, smart soldiers, of course. But the interesting thing is that all these new technologies we are speaking about have their relation to cyber. Cyber is the biggest and hugest enabler for new technologies. So is cyber hybrid, or what is it? The similarity is that defender have to protect against all possible channels and kinds of attacks, but the attacker only has to find one little small weak point to attack at the time and the place of their choice. And that even everything anonymous. Strategy and goals of cyber and hybrid actors are relatively easy. These are principally state and or non-state actors. They use asymmetric means, undermining the conventional military, economical, political strength of a nation, of a society, and using data security, protection of privacy, rules of laws, etc. against us. The goals are also easy: surprise the individual, surprise the society, destruction of trust, that leads to frustration of the population, of the society, of the government, and then maybe to a political return of the government. What is cyber now in context to hybrid threats? Yes, cyber threats are parts of hybrid threats, but the cyberspace is a domain by its own. Cyber attacks are tools to achieve strategic political goals, and they are contestable. Also hybrid threats. And cyber power is the enabler for future technologies as well as hybrid campaigns. Leads me now to the first conclusions. Yes, cyber attacks, they are no warning before, they come surprisingly. You need nearly no efforts, you need some computers, some smart guys, but you have immediately great impact. And that impact and effect even immediately worldwide. And the cyberspace is an unfathomable, never-ending space for information acquisition. That leads me also now to the similarity between information and cyberspace. I come now to the current COVID-19 crisis in general. Yes, it was classified by the WHO as a pandemic, March the 11th. And we see mis and disinformation everywhere. Like I told you before, yeah, Corona self-test, protection by garlic, drinking disinfectants against it, yeah, or disinformation, COVID-19 was spread in China by a foreigner, or the US are using the virus to gain advantage over China, or Europe has a lack of qualified doctors to combat the virus. China is testing a bioweapon, etc., etc. Millions of these disinformations and misinformations we read in the last weeks. And also, at the same time, that's interesting, during that pandemic, we can see a rising number of cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. Hospitals in the Czech Republic has been attacked. The WHO has been attacked. The US Health Department has been attacked. Twitter botnets against states have been performed. Social media, 60% of the false claims about COVID-19 pandemic remain online. And this is something what I miss personally as an EU citizen, common European Union actions. And if we look now, the so-called Western world, EU and NATO nations, all countries and even all countries worldwide have started, or nearly all countries worldwide, have started their crisis mechanisms and declared a state of emergency, but a lot of degrees of execution, well, like we heard it before in the presentation from IRAKLI. Ban on going out, shops are closed, police is patrolling, etc., etc. But what could be 5 lessons learned until now? The use of digital technologies are already taking really a giant leap that will remain and will continue to grow. There will be really a massive surge in digitization, and the digital union is an absolute must for me. When it comes to research and development, we have to pool our strength even much more across the European Union. That this now begins in the pharmaceutical sector is a glimmer of hope. We need European autonomy in critical areas, and we need to be much more aware of our European responsibility. To respond to such crises globally, we must shoulder aid to Africa or Latin America together in Europe. And the European crisis management mechanisms, I come to that a little bit later, will also experience a new dimension, and they must be adopted. Armed forces, I go quickly over that slide, yeah. Armed forces in various forms support everything in many countries, mainly, of course, with logistics and so on. Picking of food, protection of legal interests, protection of constitutional institutions, their ability to act, guarding critical infrastructures, assistance to the police. And there are really already remarkable examples of the use of the armed forces during that crisis. Armed forces are building hospitals in record time, like in the US, in Great Britain, in the Netherlands, support the police, offer transportation options. For example, in Germany, 15,000 soldiers support the fight against the pandemic, Poland, 9,000, Austria, 4,000, only examples. Also, military deployed across border. So, for example, Romanian forces have brought 90 tons of medical material from South Korea. Czech army brought equipment to Spain and Italy, etc., etc. Lessons learned for the armed forces until now, or lessons identified even. Very interesting. Giuseppe Conte, the Italian prime minister, said at the beginning of the crisis, that is why we need full military mobilization, and parliament must act as if we are in war. Military support was necessary. Very interesting to observe that the legislative adjustment in various stages, also like we heard it before in the presentation from IRAKLI, needed in all countries only maximum a week. And for me as a military, for example, it's very interesting. Combat troops support logistic troops. And as I said before, the crisis management mechanisms are ramped up in a dimension that would never have been possible. And all of these measures were, if you think back now to January, yeah, or February, were unthinkable just some weeks ago. We have to get used, as a lesson learned generally, yeah, to the fact that we do not have an answer to every question immediately, but that we are ready to continuously learn and adapt our strategies. Therefore, we really need a new way of working together, now and also in the future. Concerning the crisis now, yes, we all have to get used to a new everyday life without shaking hands, with careful hand washing, keeping distance, as well as wearing mouth and nose protection. And we don't know how long a crisis will last and what will be the next. Leads me now to my next chapter. This is the crisis management mechanisms. On this sketch, you see about how the crisis management mechanisms in the European countries and even in the most other countries also are working. If there is an incident, self-aid, and it even works for companies also. If you have a serious incident, you get support or should get support by the government. And if there is really a crisis, the government is responsible, even civilian authorities, or later, if it comes to a war or to really conflicts, armed conflicts, of course, the military is responsible. All nations, and this is for me one of the biggest lessons learned, have to have a cyber attack information system within their country that looks at the malware, looks at the traffic flow, and on the infrastructure, critical infrastructure. That leads to a system what is informing the national operational structures. What is it? A cybercrime attack or a cyber terroristic attack or espionage, whatever. I come already to my conclusions. Attacks are normally part of a larger campaign, like we saw, and combine at least espionage, sabotage, and disinformation. It's like a shadow war, potentially more extensive, more effective, and more secret than the Cold War. And hybrid and cyber and information attacks from state and non-state actors will be even harder to assign in the future. The nature of national security threats has not changed fundamentally, but the cyber and information space has opened up a whole new domain to be considered in conflict and also even war scenarios, and has provided a new delivery mechanism that can increase the speed, stealth, precision, diffusion, and power of an attack. Cyber domain and activity in cyberspace do not automatically constitute a hybrid threat. In the landscape of hybrid threats, cyber is only one domain in which harmful activity can take place. Cyber interference consists of operations by state and, like I explained before, non-state actors conducted in cyberspace. If this activity targets critical infrastructure, for instance, by cyber means to achieve political, military aims alongside other activity. Principally, I come to the end of my presentation. It does not need an army, a computer is more than enough, has been said by IRAKLI. So in 2007, after the huge cyber attacks against Estonia, I'm principally at the end of my talk, of course, of my presentation. Of course, I'm still open for question. Thank you very much, and I hand over.
Thank you so much, Joseph and IRAKLI, for being on time. So we do have a few questions from the audience. I will pick one first for IRAKLI from Romario. Do you encourage governments to let the industry develop AI application, or is it better for the government to develop by themselves?
And Romario, who asked the question, is that it really does depend on the situation from which country and where and how. Normally, to develop complex AI applications is not very easy task, and a lot of governments don't have the capabilities of developing such applications, depending on the complexity and depending on the scope. Most of the times, governments, law enforcement agencies are cooperating with private sector to do private public-private partnership exercises to develop AI applications or use them directly. Therefore, there is no straightforward answer to this question. I always like the private-public partnerships. I like when private sector is involved in developing applications. For example, when we are doing our exercises, when we are doing our projects, we're always involving private sector in it because we would like to get as much as possible in the projects which we are undertaking.
Okay. One question from Siddharth. Can cybercrime control act as a filtering net for contents published on social media platforms? So Joseph, would you like to answer that?
Of course, I can answer. I mean, this is a question discussed a lot in expert groups, for example. Yeah, how you can control the publishing on the social media platforms, yeah, and the contents. Yeah, of course, there are a lot of filtering methods already here. Principally, personally, me, I don't like all of them, yeah. But there are really millions of methods that try to do it. Principally, I think that the social media platforms are self-responsible and they should care about what is published on their platforms.
Okay, IRAKLI, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, as I said, I mean, in different parts of the world, there are different balance between security and the privacy. What we would like to see is the data being anonymized and used only for the specific purposes, for the specific limited times, and that should be the task. Citizens should fully understand what their data is used for, what would be the purpose of that, and what would be the achievement of the situation. Certain filtering to take out the hate speech, some abusive materials definitely can take place, but at the same time, what we are advocating is the full sort of compliance to the human rights fundamental principles.
Right. So I'm taking one question from Carlos Alberto. He said AI can be of great help taking preventive actions during times of crisis, and important examples have been applied in countries such as Canada, China, or the EU, where a state of emergency seems to justify its use on the use of human rights. So recommendations on use for AI are being developed, but shouldn't there be a stronger regulations?
Right, I can briefly, yes, I can briefly, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can briefly say that, as I mentioned it before as well, this crisis is going to accelerate the policy data or data policy debate globally, and there will be many debates. For example, right now, we have some measures globally taken, like in the European Union, we have the General Data Protection Regulation, so-called GDPR, in place. We have principles of personal data protection and privacy at the it's a UN system-wide framework which governs use of data by UN organizations. There are other issues like data protection being discussed in major international forums already: General Assembly, human rights, Secretary General's high-level panel, digital cooperation, internet governance forums. So therefore, this is going to only accelerate, and there will be some regulations, obviously, on the national level as well. In some countries, there will be so-called pandemic laws where governments would be allowed to use or take certain measures. Again, from the sort of a general recommendation from our side is that, yes, anonymize the data, try to use it only for the limited time, and share the knowledge for everyone. And it has to be specific as far as the purpose is concerned.
Right. So one question from Akshar: what measure government should take to secure users' data, as we have seen several incidents where users' data have been leaked? Maybe Joseph, you'd like to take that?
Yes, I can do so. The question, thank you for this question. The question is very good, but very hard to answer. It's very hard. I mean, when I think about cybercrime delicts, like ransomware, for example, in 2017, in May, thousands of companies worldwide have been blackmailed, by the ransomware called UNICRI. And you only had to pay €275 that your computer is because your network was unusable and your computer gets open. The blackmail letter was written in 28 languages, and infections we had in more than 150 countries. So this is a very hard question, what you can do against that, even in this attack, to pay such a small, under brackets, amount. The problem of cybercrime attacks are really rising, and like I said in my presentation, one of the last slides, all companies or even all governments need some kind of cyber attack information system within their country, concerning their law, their constitution, and everything, to observe such attacks and to come behind that attacks in time and hopefully more early than also early to enough to react. Yes.
Right. So for IRAKLI, there is one question from Paul Jensen. You mentioned general aspect that should be taken into account when AI and people surveillance is put into practice. So one was privacy. Are there general UN rules regarding privacy, or is it a country concern?
Yes, as I mentioned it actually in my sort of a previous answer, there is no global charter or global convention on the data privacy, data policy. What we have is GDPR at the European Union. We have principles of personal data protection and privacy. That's a UN system-wide framework which governs the use of data by UN organizations. I think that in the future, these type of crises are going to accelerate the debate to create more global data policy frameworks. It will start nationally, it will spill over, and at one point probably we'll have more sort of a global charter which will regulate use of data globally.
Okay. So this question is for both of you. How do you see geospatial technologies in combination with AI affect the fight against cybercrime? So any precedents which have been implemented?
If
Joseph,
you will,
maybe you can start.
or Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can start. I think we have I think IRAKLI, of course, you know, we have within Europe the Budapest Convention. It's an act of the European Union, yeah, to the fight of all countries, nations against cybercrime, against ransomware attacks, against all this stuff. It's more or less police action and law enforcement, of course. Yeah, we have a lot of different initiatives within Europe to gain that problem. Yeah, principally that's mine. IRAKLI, I hand over.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you see, in addition to what Joseph said, what will happen in the future is that right now most of the cyber crimes are conducted by human beings, human hackers, and generating different type of techniques to penetrate the networks and penetrate the systems. In the future, what we will have is that autonomous systems, like AI-based applications, which are going to conduct the cyber crimes and cyber attacks, which is going to make situation even more complex than it is now, which will definitely make us to develop more and more AI-driven applications to counter it. Because when you have an autonomous system, which might be a million times more powerful than an existing attack, which will not need to have a rest or to eat or to get paid and try to find loopholes to penetrate the system, self-learning every time, that's a very dangerous situation when if you don't employ AI-driven defense systems, it will be very difficult to protect against it. Therefore, this is going to push to more general and the AI-based technology for the defense purposes.
So one question from Vinita. How shall different governments interact and coordinate with each other to reduce cybercrime? Joseph?
Yes, I can take this question, of course. Yeah, even it's not my specialty. However, and like I said before, there are really a lot of initiatives within Europe for the fight against cybercrime. Yeah, I mean, there are two things that are really important in fighting against cyber attacks, and I speak now about cyber attacks, or cybercrime is one part of it. Yeah, this is awareness building. Yeah, everybody must know that he's switching on the computer, that there can happen something. Everybody is self-responsible for his computer or her computer to secure it. This is awareness, and this is also not only for human beings. It's also for companies. It's for countries. It's for societies. And the second is international cooperation in different manners. Yeah, to fight that problem. Only these two ways.
Certainly, the international cooperation is extremely vital and important. Obviously, as Joseph mentioned, there is a convention on cybercrime, also known as the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, or the Budapest Convention, which is the first international treaty seeking to address internet and computer crimes. And it is harmonizing the national laws, and it is aimed to improving investigative techniques and increasing cooperation among nations. So, and within this convention, there are additional protocols and additional initiatives which are adding to it and ensuring the cooperation. Without cooperation, cybercrimes are not only threatening one country. The same techniques can be used for many different facilities, and we see that on a daily basis. Therefore, again, I emphasize the countries, cooperation of the countries and cooperation on different platforms. Like from our side, together with Interpol, we have a specialized platform for law enforcement, which is AI for law enforcement platform, and we're bringing the law enforcement agencies to share their experiences and facilitate the launching of the projects together. And similarly, we're looking at the AI and cyber dimension as well there, which is going to be a new and accelerated danger and requiring the new and accelerated solutions for it.
Right. Okay, this one question is for Joseph. Is cybercrime going to close the web for government, science, and business?
Okay, I will answer very quickly. No, hopefully not. Principally, more I cannot say about it, yeah, because there are a lot of initiatives, yeah, from nations, from international organizations to fight cybercrime, yeah, and I think hopefully we are on a good way, and together with artificial intelligence, self-learning machines, etc., we hopefully are on a good way to fight that problem. Thank you.
One question for IRAKLI. What steps can be taken to increase public engagement and reduce public mistrust of AI?
Yes, that's an excellent question, because the public trust of artificial intelligence is extremely vital. Whether it's used by law enforcement, whether used by other governmental agencies or anyone, if there is no public trust to this technology, there will be no applications in place, and we will have we will always have public backlashes towards these technologies, and then we will not be able to use it anymore, and we will have serious problems in it.
Well, I can give a short answer. I try to give you a short answer. Yeah, I don't think that the public is not trusting artificial intelligence so much. Yeah, I think the concerns are because of this disinformation and misinformation. Yeah, and what I think to prevent cyber attacks or to solve that problem from the public opinion, it is openness, of course, and rules of law, of course. Yeah, these are the main points.
Okay, and then maybe we will close the webinar. Thank you so much for both the speakers. Thank you for the audience for joining us. And stay safe, everyone. I hope you will join us again for the next webinar. And good morning, good night, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Stay safe, everyone.